Well, you're certainly familiar with the organization, Safe Place in Battle Creek, and they have a new executive director, and this is our opportunity to introduce you to her. Jessica Edel-Harrelson is her name, and she joins us in the studio this morning. Jessica, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for the time today. Talk about your background as you come to us in Calhoun County.
Well, I come with a little bit of experience. For a little over 5 years, I've been the executive director of Siren Eaton Shelter up in Eaton County. It's one of our sister shelters that we coordinate with.
Lansing area?
Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I was an adjunct professor at Western Michigan University. And one of my areas of focus in my graduate work was domestic violence research. So that's kind of what brought me to this work.
Right. So this is something which you've studied for some time, and you've been living it in the service sector.
Yes. I've been involved in the domestic violence movement for a little over a decade.
Mm-hmm. You know, is this, my perception is that this is a problem that exists without being obvious to an average person. Would you say that's true?
Yes and no. I think it exists. I think it's a lot more prevalent than people tend to think, than the average person might think. I think a lot of people don't understand how often it happens. About 1 in 3 women will experience violence over the course of their lifetime, which is absolutely huge for a violent crime.
1 in 3?
1 in 3.
Man.
So I think the average person doesn't realize how prevalent it is, but recently in the past couple of years, we've had a lot of coverage about domestic violence, high-profile domestic violence cases in the media. So I think people are realizing that it occurs not at the rate that it occurs, and I still think we have this perception that it wouldn't happen to me or it wouldn't happen to someone that I know.
Sure.
And so a lot of people kind of shield themselves with that.
Do those high-profile cases, do they help in terms of awareness of the problem?
I think so. I think they allow a lot more people, in one sense, to be able to come forward and admit that this is also happening to them. But I think that's a little more of a long-term effect. I think the immediate effect, I mean in maybe the first week, couple days after one of these high-profile cases come out, there's a lot of victim blaming that goes on in the media. And so initially it may shut people down, but then I think organizations like ours and different domestic violence activist groups will come forward and give people a voice and give people a stage to be able to come out and say that this is happening to me as well.
Jessica Edel-Harrelson is here from Safe Place. We'll take a break and come back and pick up where we leave off on WBCK. We're here with Jessica Edel-Harrelson. She's the new executive director at Safe Place. So we've been talking about the incidence of domestic violence. You said 1 in 3 women sometime in their life will experience some kind of violence. That's a shocking statistic. What constitutes violence? Maybe we don't fully, those of us who aren't connected to this somehow, might not fully understand what's under that violence heading.
Well, and violence is in and of itself a little bit of a misnomer. When we talk about domestic violence, what we're really talking about is power and control. So these are relationships where one person is trying to create and then maintain power and control over their partner. And there are many tools that assailants use in order to create that power and control. The violence is only one of them. In a lot of the relationships, violence is the final act when the victim is leaving. And sometimes the domestic homicide is even the first violent act, or up to, or leading up to, during, and after an exit is when violence often surfaces. So domestic violence encompasses things like financial control, emotional abuse, using children against the partner, sexual abuse, and a lot of times the physical sexual violence or threat of that violence is kind of the last-ditch effort that an assailant will use in order to maintain control.
It's reached its precipice. The potential to lose that control is there.
Exactly.
One consistency through all that, I presume, is intimidation. This works well, doesn't it?
It does. And unfortunately, the tools that assailants use are very effective.
Man. So extricating oneself from this situation becomes a very intricate matter.
It is. And, I think in society, when we talk about victims, particularly back to the high-profile cases, we often ask, why didn't she leave or why didn't she leave sooner? And unfortunately, when a victim is leaving the relationship is the most dangerous time. That's when domestic homicides occur. So we always want to start with safety planning, and we encourage people to, if you're thinking about leaving, to leave safely. And that's really where Safe Place comes in.
Right. These things are done, I suppose, under a shroud of darkness or some kind of, at least as you say, exit plan that's been carefully thought out.
Correct.
You have to help be a fiduciary to a person who's already in danger, and this is the most dangerous time, as you pointed out.
It is. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah.
And so we really want victims to leave, and that's the first thing that we want to happen. But from our standpoint, we only want that to happen when it can happen safely.
How successful is it for a person who has been extricated in this manner to reestablish themselves and then be free of that control?
I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
It depends on what other variables of abuse are present, and really depends on the social supports that a victim has. Victims that have a lot of friend and family support will often be able to leave. I don't want to say easier because it's never easy, but victims that have very little financial resources and little social supports are the ones that it's going to be a lot harder for them to leave.
Do some of them have to go relocate themselves somewhere far away?
Absolutely. And Safe Place can help with that. And we take victims from out of state, out of county sometimes when that's necessary.
And with the advent of the internet, to take yourself somewhere else and not be found, this has to be challenging.
It is very challenging.
It's not like the witness protection program where your name is changed and everything.
Well, and you think about technology today, even on your cell phone, when you take a picture and it automatically asks to tag someone in the picture because it recognizes that.
Right.
So one of the things that we do too is safety planning around technology and encouraging people to turn off their GPS and their location services and things like that.
Sure. A picture that winds up on Facebook can automatically have a location tag on it. Wow. Think about that for a second. Jessica Edel-Harrelson is here from Safe Place. We'll take a short break and come back on WBCK. WBCK, we're here with Jessica Edel-Harrelson, new executive director at Safe Place. We've talked a little about the high-profile cases, and I guess the one for those of us who grew up in the 80s and the 70s, the one that is just horribly disappointing is the Bill Cosby situation. How does someone of that stature get away with this for so long and violating so many different women, presumably? That's the accusation here.
Well, I think you said it right there. Someone of that high stature, combined with the fact that we tend to blame the victim when this kind of stuff happens. And so when the Cosby case came out, news media, even our, day-to-day interactions, people found it so hard to believe that somebody like him could perpetrate on so many different people. And so just that immediate thinking that it's so hard to believe makes it easy for someone like that to get away with it for so long.
Well, it certainly was the antithesis of the character he's known for.
Absolutely.
Man.
Well, and that's very common, too. If assailants were easy to spot, nobody would date them. Nobody would have interaction with them, but they're not easy to spot, unfortunately.
Yeah, speaking of that, I saw a social media post that it was no one I knew, but somebody must have clicked the like button on it or something, and so it was showing up. And it was a young woman in front of a video camera telling her story about how she was swept up in this relationship with this man who was wonderful. She married him, and then it changed. It can really get that far before the problems arise?
It can. And a lot of times it starts with that control, but the control is subtle. And in the very beginning of a relationship, sometimes the control is blurred with normal courtship behaviors. And so it's hard to tell the difference. And a lot of times you do get that far. You fall in love, you get married, you have children, and then the control becomes more intense. Then we add on emotional abuse, financial abuse, use of the children, intimidation. And then it kind of creates this perfect storm where it makes it very difficult for victims to leave that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Is it ever reversed? Is there ever a control and abuse dynamic initiated by the female instead?
Yes. So and I'm guilty of this too. We often talked about domestic violence in gendered terms, and it is a highly gendered crime. The majority of victims are female. The majority of abusers are male.
Right.
But we do have male victims. Anywhere from 8 to 15% of victims are male, and Safe Place does serve men.
8 to 15%.
Yes. So it's a much smaller number, but it's still significant.
And does the difference in gender play any role in any sort of difference in the way the control is executed?
I don't think so. I think fear and control is fear and control. The tactics might be a little bit different, but the abuse often looks the same.
Are there innovations here in the way organizations like Safe Place could be helping people that are in this situation?
I think so. I think there are some really nice models across the country of how domestic violence victims are being served. And that's one of the things that myself, my staff, my board of directors are looking at in the next year or so to see if there are better ways that we can be providing services to victims. And even in Michigan, you see different models.
What are some of the more innovative models that you've seen, if you could speak generally about them?
What I really like to see are different program modalities, so different ways of providing shelter. Safe Place right now is a communal shelter, so we have 56 beds there. Just looking at the organization I came from, for example, there's 125 beds at Siren, and we have they have many different programs that are offered. So a transitional housing, motel program, and so it really works well for maybe people that come in that just need a night or two or an emergency response to get out of that situation immediately versus someone who needs to stay a little bit longer, has some more complex issues to work on. And communal living isn't for everyone. It works really well for some people who like that sense of support, but for others, it's not the best fit.
They want to stay private.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's understandable. Well, it makes sense that anytime there's a change like this in an organization that everything gets evaluated. It sounds like that's what's happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. And change isn't necessarily bad. Change is good. Transition is hard.
Right. Well, we'll stay in touch and continue to talk about these issues and things as time goes on. There's an event soon for Safe Place, isn't there?
Yes. October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we are gearing up for our 9th annual Walk a Mile in Her Shoes event, which is next Saturday, the 22nd at the mall. And this is really a fun event to engage our male allies in the work that we do. And so we are hoping to have a lot of community support for this. We're still looking for volunteers. We're still looking for large pumps. Large women's shoes. Got it. And hoping to have a lot of people that day. We're hoping to raise some good funds and raise a lot of awareness. It's a bit of a spectacle, but that's what we're looking for here, right? It is. And, like I said, it's kind of a silly and fun way to engage our male allies, but it is around a very serious topic. Is this a major fundraiser for Safe Place? It is. This is one of our 2 major fundraisers. This event is a little more geared towards public awareness and fundraising. Last year, we brought in around $10,000. We are looking to double that this year. Wow. Okay. Well, you can't achieve a goal until you state it. So there you have it. Absolutely. 20,000. All right. If folks want more information on that, they can probably ring you up or look on the web, right? Absolutely. SafePlaceShelter.org. All right, Jessica, we'll stay in touch and talk more about these things as time goes on. Thank you. Thanks for having me. We appreciate it much. Jessica Edel-Harrelson, Safe Place in Calhoun County.